When Judge Harrison finally glanced up from the stack of papers, I already knew how this circus would wrap up. His eyebrows shot so far upward, they nearly blended with his thinning hair, and he removed his glasses with the slow, deliberate motion of a man about to verbally dismantle someone. His voice dripped with disbelief as he asked, "Mrs. Petton, am I reading this right? You're suing this man because his house isn't part of your HOA. Margaret Petton, queen of Riverside Gardens and self-appointed neighborhood overlord, stood stiffly in her power suit, looking like an underpaid real estate agent trying to sell condos in a ghost town. With absolute certainty, she said, "That's correct, Your Honor. His refusal to follow our community standards is lowering property values." The judge turned toward me. Without a word, I slid a single document across the polished desk. The county's official property survey. "Your Honor," I said with a smile I struggled to hide, "as you'll see, my house is in Pine Ridge Estates, which is entirely separate from Riverside Gardens. Different development, different streets, different everything." Judge Harrison raised his gavel, brought it down sharply, and announced, "Case dismissed with prejudice. Mrs. Petton, one more frivolous case like this, and you'll be in contempt." Margaret's face cycled through nearly every shade of red on the spectrum before landing somewhere between beet purple and pure fury. 3 weeks before that courtroom scene, life had been simple. I had just moved into my dream home at 42 Pine Ridge Drive. As a work-from-home software developer, I'd finally escaped cramped apartments and bought a cozy ranch house with a detached workshop, perfect for restoring my vintage motorcycles. Best of all, Pine Ridge Estates had no HOA, no arbitrary grass rules, no paint color police, no fees for services nobody wanted. Just freedom. My new home set a mere 23 feet from the border of Riverside Gardens, the HOA-ruled fiefdom next door. Close enough to wave, far enough, so I thought, to avoid their nonsense. Margaret Petton, however, had other plans. She'd been running Riverside Gardens like a personal kingdom since 2016, patrolling with a tape measure and clipboard, hunting violations like a mall cop with a badge complex. The trouble started the day I installed solar panels. Everything was legal and properly permitted, but Margaret, during her morning patrol, spotted them and immediately decided they were a threat to her authority. That afternoon, she stormed up my driveway, clipboard at the ready, and declared, "These solar panels haven't been approved by the Riverside Gardens Architectural Review Committee." I kept rinsing my motorcycle and replied, "Good thing I don't live in Riverside Gardens." Her eye twitched. "Your property affects the visual harmony of our community. You need to submit for retroactive approval." I set down the rag, looked her square in the eye, and said, "Margaret, let's clear this up. I don't live in your HOA. I don't pay your dues. I am not, and never will be, under your rules. Have a good day." That should have been the end. It wasn't. The next morning, a violation notice was taped directly to my front door, like some medieval proclamation nailed up by the town crier. It accused me of unauthorized solar panels, a non-compliant mailbox, and excessive oil stains on my driveway. The notice threatened $100 a day fines until I appear before the HOA board. I snapped a picture and sent it to my buddy James, a lawyer. He laughed for a solid minute before saying, "Save that. It's textbook harassment." Margaret doubled down. Every morning at 7 a.m. sharp, she was out front taking pictures of my property. She called the city, claiming my workshop was an illegal business because I sometimes repaired friends' bikes. She even gathered a petition from 3 Riverside Gardens residents, swearing my solar panels caused dangerous glare, despite their houses not even facing mine. The piece de resistance came in the form of a cease and desist letter, mailed via certified post, typed in Comic Sans on HOA letterhead. It threatened legal action if I didn't comply with Riverside Gardens regulations. She even accused my wildflower garden of aesthetic terrorism. She wanted compensation for what she claimed were falling property values, emotional distress, and something she'd invented called administrative burden, meaning the hours she spent trying to force me to obey her rules. On top of that, she demanded the court retroactively place me in her HOA, require me to pay 5 years of back dues, plus late fees. Altogether, she was asking for $23,000. When the papers were served, I didn't panic. I didn't even hire a lawyer. All I did was pull together 3 simple pieces of proof. The official county property map showing the neighborhood boundaries, my deed that clearly stated there were no HOA restrictions, and a Google Maps printout with a giant red arrow pointing to my house labeled, "Not in Riverside Gardens." The hearing came up quicker than I expected. Margaret arrived with her entire HOA board in tow. 7 people wearing identical blazers like they were some kind of suburban secret society. She carried 3 bulky binders she dramatically called her evidence. Inside were printed emails from residents complaining about having to see my solar panels, dozens of photographs of my lawn dandelions from every possible angle, and a PowerPoint about declining property values made with ancient clip art. She even tried setting up a projector before the bailiff shut her down, twice. When it was her turn to speak, Margaret went on for nearly 15 minutes. She preached about community standards, ranted about uniformity, and claimed my defiance was sparking unrest among her residents. With a completely straight face, she warned, if even one homeowner is allowed to live outside our rules while still enjoying the benefits of our neighborhood's aesthetics, we risk total chaos. The judge cut in and asked, "But he doesn't live in your neighborhood, does he?" Margaret, visibly annoyed, snapped back, "He lives next to our community, Your Honor. His house is visible from our streets. That makes him part of our governance." The judge stared at her like she'd just spoken another language. "So, by that logic, is the gas station across the road also under your HOA?" She actually paused to consider, then answered, "Well, that's commercial property, so it's different." When my turn came, I stood up, handed over my 3 documents, and calmly explained, "I live at 42 Pine Ridge Drive in Pine Ridge Estates. Mrs. Petton lives at 871 Riverside Gardens Drive, 2 separate neighborhoods, built by different developers, with entirely different rules. I am no more bound by her HOA than she is by the apartment complex 3 blocks away." The judge looked at the map, then at Margaret. "Mrs. Petton," he said flatly, "you do realize filing frivolous lawsuits can result in sanctions?" Margaret grew more desperate, arguing this wasn't frivolous, insisting property boundaries didn't override community impact, and claiming she had a fiduciary duty to protect Riverside Gardens for what she called adjacent noncompliance. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning she couldn't bring it back. But that wasn't the end. I filed a harassment report with the police, bringing evidence of her taping violation notices to my door, her daily photo taking, and her false complaints to the city. The officer chuckled while taking notes, saying, "You're not the first." She once tried to make a citizen's arrest on a mail carrier for wearing shorts she said were too short. They issued her a formal warning for trespassing and harassment. When the officer delivered it, Margaret actually tried quoting HOA bylaws back at him. He just said, "Ma'am, HOA rules don't override real laws." After that, I mailed every resident of Riverside Gardens a packet containing the court dismissal, the police report, and a short note. "Your HOA president spent your dues on a lawsuit against someone who doesn't even live in your neighborhood. Maybe ask where the rest of your money has gone." The fallout was immediate. Homeowners discovered she'd been using association funds for personal perks, like those matching blazers and a laptop she claimed was for HOA work, but was really for her essential oil side hustle. At the emergency HOA meeting, residents demanded a full financial audit. Margaret tried to block the vote, but the board ignored her. When she erupted about constitutional rights and hostile takeovers, the vice president literally had to gavel her down because she refused to surrender the main one. The removal vote was 28-1. Her only supporter was herself. She stood up, pointed at random board members, and shouted that property values would collapse without her leadership. The new president's first act was to refund part of the dues wasted on her lawsuit. The second was to ban Margaret from holding any HOA office for 5 years. When the audit came back, the numbers were worse than anyone expected. She had blown $47,000 of HOA money on legal fights, most of them against properties that weren't even part of the HOA, including the gas station she once tried to fine for its neon sign. The association filed a civil suit against her for misuse of funds. The court ordered her to repay $32,000 plus $15,000 in punitive damages. When the judgment was read, Margaret's jaw dropped so far I thought it might unhinge. She whispered, almost to herself, but I was protecting property values, before her new lawyer leaned over and hushed her. In response, I installed a flagpole in my yard and raised a flag that read, "Not your HOA. Petty? Definitely. Satisfying? Beyond measure." 2 days later, she filed a lawsuit. Her claim? That because my property was near Riverside Gardens, I was implicitly bound by their rules.